In the mid-2000s, Kristin Davis gained notoriety as the Manhattan Madam for running a high-end escort service in New York City. Her business reportedly catered to high-profile individuals such as Governor Eliot Spitzer, David Beckham, and Alex Rodriguez. These associations brought significant media attention and thrust her into the public spotlight. In 2008, Kristin was arrested for her involvement in the escort service, and she served 4 months in solitary confinement in Rikers Island. Kristin ran for governor of New York State in 2010. In 2013, during her campaign as a Libertarian candidate for New York City Comptroller, Kristin was arrested again for distributing prescription pills. This arrest occurred 2 weeks after Eliot Spitzer entered the same exact race, leading her to believe that it was politically motivated. Fast forward to today, and Kristin Davis is on the comeback. She is a political consultant and has worked with the likes of Roger Stone, former New York City Mayor Rudy Giuliani, General Michael Flynn, and Robert F. Kennedy Jr. And I am happy to announce that today on the program, she doesn't do many of these interviews, boys and girls, is the Manhattan Madam, Kristin Davis. Kristin, welcome to the show. There she is. Kristin Davis, how are you today?
I am excellent. Thanks for having me on.
You know, just reading that short kind of synopsis, that short bio of everything you've been through, just those couple sentences, Kristin Davis, it gives me chills. Like, you have been through the damn ringer. You have seen it all, from inside of prison cells to running for office to working with the biggest names in American politics. The highs and lows, I mean, how the hell are you doing today?
I'm great. I think anything outside of a prison cell is a good time, personally, but it probably makes me more skilled at representing all of these people in our current political climate.
You know, Kristin, I know you don't do a ton of interviews, you don't do a ton of media, you do some, but I was curious, as I read about you and all the news articles and look back at everything that's happened, have you been approached to do one of these like Netflix docuseries or some sort of a movie, a Hollywood blockbuster on your life? Because really, when you look at your life, there's not many people that can say that you've really seen it all from a political standpoint and from a legal standpoint.
Well, and I started in hedge funds, right? I was a trading assistant, which is where I learned about the business because all the finance bros were using services. And then I became vice president of a $5 billion fund. And then I decided to start an agency, and then I was arrested. So I have a really unique background. I have filmed, I'm not allowed to say the network, but I have filmed an episode for a major network, a true crime episode on my life, because that seems to be the trend now. Everybody's looking at the Menendez brothers and all these things. And by those standards, I'm a very small fish, but it is interesting.
So just to give our audience today some perspective, if you could, and this might be difficult, you know, from an emotional standpoint to bring back difficult things in your life, but could you walk us through, take us back to the day that you were in your place with your boyfriend and the SWAT team came knocking on your door and everything around that? Could you share that story with us?
Sure. The backstory is I had already lawyered up. Governor Spitzer was caught with a girl who used to work for me and another agency, and I knew it was coming. So I had closed everything down. I was waiting for them to come through the door, hoping this one attorney who has now basically been disbarred for scamming people, I was hoping he would negotiate turning myself in. So I was sitting in my apartment in my gym clothes, stressed out, sort of terrified about what might happen. And there was a knock on the door. My boyfriend looked out the peephole and he said, "Kristin, the SWAT team is here. What do you want to do?" My response was, "Well, I'm 14 floors up in a high rise in Manhattan. What am I going to do? Open the door." And he opened the door. In came, 40, 50 armed officers with shields. They had battering ram. They had their guns drawn. And I'm sitting there in my gym clothes. They said, "Who's Kristin Davis?" I said, "Well, clearly it's me. There's two of us here. It's me." And they, kicked him out and arrested me, shackles around the waist, around the legs. And then I went outside and there were 2 helicopters overhead. They had closed down 4 blocks in the middle of Midtown Manhattan in the middle of the day. And there were about 100 police cars 100 police cars there. I was clearly, that was maybe the victim of the first ever witch hunt.
So fast forward to, you worked in your various businesses behind the scenes, right? And now this thing happens with the escort service, and you're now the Manhattan Madam, and you're on the cover of the New York Post, and you're really across the world in international media. And now you go from somebody that, does your business behind the scenes to somebody that's in the spotlight and is now a celebrity. How did you deal with that? Like when you got out of prison, that must have been really heady to step out into the wild and say, oh shit, everyone knows who I am, and it's not necessarily for the best reasons.
Right. I did it to myself. I take full responsibility for what I did, but it was definitely difficult. I tried to embrace it a bit. I ended up meeting Roger Stone on a radio show, a Sirius XM radio show. And then he started lobbying me to run for office. And it was not anything that I would have ever thought of for myself, which I told him. It took him about 6 months, 10 months to convince me.
So you ran for office in 2010, New York governor, and you were a middle finger vote, right? You were running as a protest vote. Was it that everything that you went through with Spitzer and everything you went through with law and the Justice Department, were you just like, you know what, we need somebody running that can really just throw a monkey wrench in this whole mess?
Well, I ran as a protest candidate because Spitzer got to just resign and go back to his Fifth Avenue apartment, and my life was destroyed and I had to sign over all my money. So it was a protest candidate, but it was also spurred by the fact that in the middle of kind of my book tour and after I had met Roger, Jalissa Brisman was killed by the Craigslist killer. And she was a girl that it made a bunch of news. She was a girl that used to work for me. And I found this out because Geraldo called me and said, hey, we want to interview you. We know you used to use Craigslist to place ads for your body rub location. Would you come on the show? Google, someone's been killed. And I Googled it and I was devastated. This man was caught with trophies of dozens of victims, and none of these girls reported him to the police. And I came back to Roger and I said, how do I lobby for some sort of decriminalization so they can call the police instead of being victimized? He said, run for office.
So Roger Stone really was, during some of your most trying times, a mentor to you. I mean, he stepped up and gave you some support and gave you some direction in your life.
He did. And I think, it went both ways. People know the Roger Stone now, but the Roger Stone 15 years ago couldn't get on TV. He had his own scandal. Nobody was talking to him. So we were kind of like two black sheep that needed each other.
Kristin Davis, I look at what's happening in the news right now with P. Diddy and all of those allegations out there. And then we look at, obviously, Jeffrey Epstein and the Epstein list and all of those allegations. And is he on the list? Is she on the list? Yes or no? The American public wants to see the list. The American public wants to know who is involved in all of this P. Diddy scandal. So when everything went down with you, we had some social media, but it wasn't like it is today. Were you scared because, your name was in the hat with some of the most powerful people in our country? Were you scared at that point? Like, these people could call in favors and my life might be in jeopardy.
I wasn't scared until I got out and checked my email, and there were a bunch of death threats. So then I became scared. But my list was 10,000 names. I had all their credit card receipts, their phone calls, that my system recorded their phone calls. And, and they actually didn't go after any of these men. The prosecutors didn't care. And I often, I'd like to think, hey, listen, I'll release my list, release the Epstein list. Let's both come out there and show the people what everybody's doing.
I wish we could see that. Kristin Davis, speaking to Kristin Davis right now. So I wanted to ask you about some of your clients, some of the people you've worked with politically. So we talked about Roger Stone, General Michael Flynn, Rudy Giuliani, and also RFK Jr. All of these men have one thing in common, and that is they have been smeared in the media, right, for one reason or another. Crisis management. I don't think there's anybody in the country that's better to ask this question to. When things go down and you wake up and you mentioned checking your email and you see that phone and you're like, holy hell, the weight of the world, the international press is now on my doorstep. What do you do in the moments after, when you advise your clients, in the moments after a terrible story breaks?
Depends on the situation. A lot of times for terrible stories, we have advance warning, right? I got outed for working to support Bobby for the last 18 years. I did so very quietly. I didn't do any press. Nobody knew. But I got outed because I responded to a reporter who was going to go forward with a really awful story that was untrue. And I fought this reporter for 3 days, and they didn't go to print, but in the interim, they Googled me. And so a lot of times, if you're fighting with reporters, you have an idea of what's going to go on, right? You know what they're asking you to confirm or not confirm, and you're fighting back. Sometimes they go forward, even if it's not true. And so how do you fight back against that? Sometimes you have to release something bigger, right? You know, sometimes we have gifts. I think in Bobby's case, one of his big gifts was the goat versus dog eating, right? Everybody ran forward with this goat eating, excuse me, whatever it was, dog. And it was really a goat, and it was all kind of above board, and it was something they did on a retreat, but it was kind of a gift because there were other things lying in that story that got overlooked, right? So I think that a lot of times it's like, well, what can we put emphasis on? How do we deal with that? If it's really bad, did you do something wrong? You know, throw yourself at the mercy of the, court of public opinion and try to, be humble.
And, a lot of these people in politics and in the celebrity world, these stories break and it's like, you just know they're going down and it's not going to be good. And they're going to have to hire somebody like you, Kristin, and it's going to be a PR mess. They're going to lose money. They're going to lose followers. They could very well lose their career. But there's one man I'm thinking about right now, and you're probably thinking about the same man, and he's Teflon Don. I mean, the damn guy got shot and he's still standing. Everything that seems to come his way, these scandals, grab him by the pee, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, there's like two, three more right now breaking in my Twitter feed. The guy just doesn't seem to get hit. It just doesn't seem like his supporters are going to leave him. It just doesn't seem like anything can touch him. What do you attribute Donald Trump's Teflonness, for lack of a better term, to? Is it just because he's been through the ringer so much and people he just kind of brushed it off his shoulder? What is it?
That's a great question. I think people forget, right? In 2017 and 2018, when it was impeachment, 2 impeachments, and all these things were happening, I got, subpoenaed to testify for the Mueller investigation, right? And he was the underdog then, the unliked underdog then, right? I was working for Roger, walking through the streets of Manhattan. People would call us traitor. I would be pushing my son, who was 2 years old, with Roger, because he's the godfather, and people would spit at him. So there was a time period where everyone hated Trump, right? The supporters were small but loyal, and he went through it, and he went through it with, integrity. He went through it showing a brave face. He was, mostly humble about all of it, and he took it. And as the cycle continued, he was exonerated, right? Everything always comes out in the wash. And you fast forward to now we've seen so much victimization of him that to us, it's like, okay, you're full of, garbage. You're not telling the truth now because we've been here this whole time. We've watched it. None of that was true. Everybody thought there was Russian collusion. They for sure thought that, and there wasn't. And so over time, he's managed to, the victim, he is the victim. They victimized him, demonized him, and that's not working for them. And they're probably shocked that it's not working.
Well, even the lawsuits, if I was a Democrat and I was a strategist on their side, I would say just don't release any of these stories. Don't do anything because it actually ends up somehow helping him. So Kristin Davis, I was speaking to somebody about a month ago, and this is a person that is a very well-known person that our whole audience knows, very powerful man, extremely rich, an A-lister, put it that way, and somebody that I look up to and somebody that I think is very intelligent. And I said to this man, I said, sir, you should run for office. You should run for governor. You should run for president of the United States in the next cycle. And you know what he told me, Kristin? He said, look at all of these politicians. They find the skeletons in the closet, even if there's not many skeletons there. We all have something in our past, some more public like you, some more private like others. Nobody is free from skeletons in the closet. And what he told me was, I don't want to end up like all of these other guys and gals and put my family through it. And God forbid, we go back to your client, Roger Stone, God forbid, maybe someday get thrown in prison. What do you say to people out there that are prominent? What do you say to people out there that are superstars, rock stars, but they're really apprehensive about running for office because they're worried about ending up in prison? That's what America is these days.
I say the same exact thing. What do you have in your closet that I need to know about now, that I need to get in front of? It's going to come out. I've done a lot of races, gubernatorial races, 4 presidential races at this point, did Gary Johnson in 2012. It's the same thing across the board. It's just worse now because we have social media and everybody can amplify a message within, minutes. So I think that's really it. Our system has been also weaponized against people who want to run for office, which is evident with Bobby. He couldn't even get on the ballot in certain states. It's just like, the system is set up for 2 parties, and how do you work within those confines?
Well, RFK Jr., and I've said this on the program a lot, he's one of the most impressive men, one of the most impressive Americans I've ever met in my life. I mean, when I got a chance to hear him speak, when I got a chance to talk to him, I was so impressed. And then you go back and you open up your phone and you look at all the news stories, and it's like, oh no, they're painting him to be some kind of a loon. But he's not a loon. I think the reason they paid him to be a loon is because they're scared of him, and they know that his message was landing. And fast forward, now it's, MAHA, right? Make America Healthy Again. And we hope that Mr. Kennedy will make America healthy again. So Kristin Davis, I want to talk to you about the comeback. We kind of highlighted a lot of the difficulties in your life, but now you're doing so much good. I follow you on Instagram. I follow you on social media. We chat privately from time to time. What do you attribute your success today to, 2024? I mean, you're out there and you're a legitimate political consultant, a businesswoman, one of the most high-powered, high-profile people working behind the scenes in politics. Could you have imagined when you were sitting in Rikers Island, you'd fast forward to 2024, and here you are?
No, I would have never imagined it because I didn't know anything about politics before Roger, and I didn't really care. I think, it's about resilience and fortitude, and how do you recover from a setback? What do you learn from it? And I was able to do both of those things. With a little help. I had some friends who gave me positions, and they said, you're going to sink or swim. And I did really good at those things, and I learned, and I kept progressing.
Would you say that you were humbled by this whole experience, by this whole roller coaster you've been on? Has it been humbling for you?
I've had so many humbling moments in my life, and it actually makes me very good at what I do. And I think that's part of what's helped me rebuild, is that I'm very good at being number 2. I know how to put someone first. I don't care about the limelight. Like you said, I don't do that many interviews. I can 100% put another person's initiatives first and use everything to push them forward. And I've done that with all these great men that I feel like I've had such, an amazing career, and all these blessings to have been able to just be around them and hear how they do business and how they strategize things. I mean, I'm so blessed for that.
Well, there's nothing America loves more, Kristin Davis, than a comeback. And you for sure, you are the ultimate comeback story. And like I said, when I read your bio, when I think about your life, it gives me chills, because you know what? We've all been through a lot of shit in our life. It's just yours was very extremely public. And here you are, and I just, I know, you don't do a lot of these long form interviews and stuff. So I really appreciate you doing this outside of the mainstream media. And I appreciate you being so open and honest today. So what is it? We running for office in the future? What's the future for Kristin Davis?
I don't know yet. Politics is so corrupt. I've been in it now for 16 years. And, the difference between it and my former agency is that at least, we had honest transactions. In politics, you never know what someone's price is, and they are literally all for sale. And it's deeply draining. I think, maybe talking about true crime is actually, well, that's actually also talking about politics. So I don't know, but,
Well, we'll look for that episode. We don't know what network. We're not going to get that today. We're not going to get that exclusive, but we did get an exclusive interview with Kristin Davis. And Kristin, I want to mention this while we're still on the air here real quick. A gentleman that you linked me up with years ago, Judge Andrew Napolitano. He is doing a show called Judging Freedom on YouTube, and he does like 3-4 interviews. The guy's so consistent, like every day, and he's interviewing like ex-spies, ex-CIA, ex-generals and military people. And if you want a perspective on the Russia-Ukraine war and what's happening with Israel, Gaza, Lebanon, and Iran over there, the judge has really got some people on his show that will open your eyes. Whether you agree or disagree with the people he interviews, I think it's the most enlightening, eye-opening show on all of YouTube. It's called Judging Freedom with somebody I know you used to work with. So just a shout out to Judge Andrew Napolitano.
I still work with him. I love the judge. We have been close for 15 years. He's one of the first people outside of Roger to believe in me and to give me a chance. He is
Well, I'd love to have him on
near
this
to my
show,
heart.
but he doesn't do, I don't think you would know, you're the lady to talk to. I don't think he's doing any media because all he does is his own show constantly, and he's getting hundreds and hundreds, if not millions of views on that thing. Again, it's the best damn, I'm a political junkie and I'm an international diplomacy nerd. So he is my go-to. I'm going to send this clip to the judge. I want him on the show. He doesn't do much media, and I got to tell you one other thing. If President Trump gets elected, you know, I don't know what's going to happen with the Supreme Court. You never know. But I would consider Judge Andrew Napolitano for a cabinet position. Just keep thinking about that man, because he is one of the most brilliant minds out there in law, in order, and in politics, and now somehow in international policy.
And he is 100% dedicated to protecting our constitutional rights, which is what we should be looking for in a judge.
He is, as are you, and we all love this country. There's Kristin Davis. My name is Billy Harfosh, broadcasting from beautiful Scottsdale, Arizona, Star Worldwide Network Studios. Like, subscribe, comment. What'd you think of that interview? We'll be back with more explosive interviews.
What does Mueller want with Roger Stone? How does it tie into what he may be looking at with the Trump team? Finally, we have someone who can help us get answers. Kristin Davis. She got the nickname the Manhattan Madam during the Elliot Spencer scandal. She's also a close friend of Roger Stone. She worked for the Trump campaign and has been a focus of the Russia probe. That has been a focus of the Russia probe. Kristin Davis, thank you for taking the opportunity.
Thanks for having me, Chris.
So, when you got in there, how long were you in there before the grand jury?
About an hour.
All right. What was the line of questioning like?
I think that's what's concerning, is that it was very one-sided. You know, there's obviously no defense attorney in there. The special counsel's office has a rapport with these jurors, and the questions were very leading. So,
like what? Give me an example. Because you're allowed to, you know, legally, you are not beholden to them.
right, I
It's
know.
not like you're a juror on a case.
I know, but the problem is they don't like you to use your First Amendment right to freedom of speech. I was issued a subpoena originally for August 3rd. Then when they found out I talked to the press, accidentally, they moved that up a week, giving me 4 days notice with a 2-year-old and saying, we don't care what happens to your child. Figure it out. You can talk to the press. You can figure out how to get here with your 2-year-old.
All right. So be that as it may, you are not one to shy away from controversy or conflict, and I know you're not going to let somebody shut you up. So
This
what
is
kind of
very
thing did
true.
they ask?
You know, I think they're really genuinely concerned about whether or not any collusion happened with Russia. And so their line of questioning really did revolve around whether or not this happened. I particularly don't have any knowledge of it. I didn't work for Roger Stone in 2016. So, you know, I answered truthfully on those questions, and
You better.
of course, I would not commit perjury, and I don't want to impede their investigation. I actually, you know, if this is legitimately something they feel that has happened, then they should go forward, and I don't want to jeopardize
I
that.
hear you, but no question that they have concerns that Roger Stone may have done something that he shouldn't have done.
I think they're concerned with all of the people in the 2016 campaign, all of the high-profile names that we've seen come across, and all the people that have worked for Roger. And since Roger was such an integral part of the campaign, they're really following all avenues.
But they didn't think you had done anything.
No.
So there was no question about, we think you did this. None of that.
None of that.
No exposure
None
for
of
you as
that.
far as
No
you know.
exposure for me in any
Or your
capacity.
attorneys have explained. None.
Correct.
Okay. But Roger, they know you know him, and
Right.
what kinds of questions were they asking you about? Who he knew, what he did, what kinds of avenues did they go down?
I mean, I think there's the general concern for some things that he seemed to predict. his tweets. The Podesta tweet, has been the subject of much controversy all over the media, and also puts him in a position to wonder how he was able to predict. And I think that's also taken out of context. He's talked about it before. He said the Podestas. Most people take that S off and to say Podesta.
Timing was still pretty uncanny. I've spoken to Roger about this directly. As we learn more, he's always welcome to come back here and make his side of the case. But what was your answer to that?
Well, and I think Roger has publicly said that his intermediary was Randy Credico. And I know that since my meeting, Randy Credico has been subpoenaed. So I think that there's some truth there that his intermediary was Randy Credico, and hopefully the truth will come out in terms of that.
You are not a particular Credico fan. Is that a fair statement?
That's a very fair statement.
Why not?
I ran him for Senate in 2010. He started a fist fight at one of my events with Roger.
Who won?
Of course, Roger Stone won.
Really? Were there actually blows thrown?
I think so.
And
I think
landed?
So. I don't know. I had left at that point in time. I just saw a video.
That's a very careful answer. So you know he won, but you don't know if anybody hit anybody else? Come on, Davis.
I just heard after the fact that there was commotion.
So you don't like Credico?
I don't like Credico.
Do you think he tried to set Roger Stone up?
It might be. They've been frenemies for a very long time. I've personally witnessed his hostility at a number of my events. I've read some of the emails he's sent threatening Roger.
Then why would Roger Stone, now he is not, right, he's no stranger to doing things with people he doesn't like, but why would he listen to Randy Credico about WikiLeaks if he doesn't like him or trust him?
Well, I think Randy Credico had some information that seemed credible at the time. And so
Do you remember telling Roger, don't listen to this guy?
I'm pretty sure I said something to the extent of, why are you friends with that douchebag? And I said the same thing in the grand jury room.
You won't give me any specifics about the questions, but that word, you're more than, thank you for injecting that to the audience. Appreciate it. So you told him, watch out for this guy. But Roger believed he might have known something about what was happening with WikiLeaks.
Well, Roger tends to give people numerous chances. And so if you come to him and, apologize a little bit and want to work with him on something new, he'll forgive you and move forward. He's an understanding guy.
Do you think that Roger Stone had contact with WikiLeaks and knew what they had?
No, he did not. And
How do you know for sure?
my family and I have had dinner with him and at that time in 2016 and asked him these questions before any of this was an issue. And the response from him at that time was, I've not had any direct contact with Julian Assange. So before this was such a colossal undertaking and event here, we were already getting straight answers from him.
Sam Nunberg says differently, in as much as he says that Roger was much more direct and strong in terms of saying that he thought he had some access and knowledge.
Well, I think that there was an email that he said jokingly to Nunberg saying, I'm having dinner with Julian Assange. But that was a joke, and Sam Nunberg tends to call you 50 times in the course of 10 minutes and email consistently, annoyingly. And so I think Roger was just putting him off and just making a joke like, please leave me alone.
You don't believe he ever had plans to have dinner with Julian Assange?
No, he's not left the country in that year. So, I mean, his passport would show that.
Now, I remember back before either of us knew better, or at least certainly I didn't, when I was talking to Roger about Guccifer and him talking to them. He didn't believe anything about Guccifer was real or anything like that, and whatever he was talking about on Twitter, he didn't think was a big deal. But since then, the intelligence community has shown that they believe that Guccifer is exactly what we were afraid it was, which is a front for Russian hackers. Do you believe Roger Stone knew who he was dealing with at Guccifer?
Absolutely not. And half the time, Roger Stone wasn't in charge. There were numerous hands in his Twitter. He was getting so many tweets. There was 5 or 6 people helping manage that process, automated systems. Roger's not particularly technologically savvy with some of the things going on in technology nowadays.
Now, for the audience's edification, you are biased. You know you like Roger Stone. He is more than a former employer. He's godfather to your child. So personally, you care about him and you want to protect him. Did you come away from your session today believing that the investigators are coming for Roger Stone?
I did. I think that there's cause for concern based on that they just want to believe something happened, which I don't believe it did. I don't
Why do
believe...
you feel that? Because you're with them, you're with the pros. You're there in front of the grand jury. This is the real game. This isn't spin. This isn't people talking to me.
Right.
How did they come across to you?
Well, there's a relationship between the special counsel prosecutor and those juror members.
100%.
They've sent
They're
their...
there for them.
Right.
It's their show.
And he's
it's not
making
supposed
jokes.
to be a trial.
Right. And he's making jokes. He has a rapport with them, and he's able to, you know, lead these questions in a negative manner. And
But you know he's allowed to do that. It was a he?
right, yes.
Okay. They're allowed to do that. Usually
Right.
the rules of evidence, they get objections and they get jammed up and a judge would have to decide. Not here. It is the prosecutor's show. So leading questions are okay, but you're saying they betrayed an intention.
Correct. And those types of questions, even though they're okay, it doesn't mean they're right. It doesn't mean you're sitting with an educated jury pool. I'm not saying that they're uneducated, but it could be a mixed bag, right? That's the whole point in having a jury. They are a mixed bag. So now you're saying questions for people who don't really have the background. They only know what you're saying, and you're leading them down a path, maybe trying to tie in this notorious figure that Roger Stone is from Get Me Roger Stone and Win at All Costs, when that's just a public persona. And a statement like, let's say, win at all costs, doesn't mean that he would go out and commit some huge, colossal crime to impair the democracy of our country. It just means in a campaign, this is sort of what you do. So everything's taken out of context, pushed down the path that they want it to be down.
Did they ask you any questions, the grand jurors?
They asked me a few.
What was it about for
Mostly
them?
just my relationship with Roger Stone, the sort of work that I do for him. I mean, we've talked about that. He's one of my closest friends. Both him and his wife are my child's godparents. So they're friends, as well as I do work for him on occasion.
Was there any question they asked you that stumped you?
No.
People in this audience will know you as the Manhattan Madam. That is in your rearview mirror.
That is.
There is no more Manhattan Madam
That was
for
so
you.
10 years ago.
What do you do now?
Right now I'm opening a nail art boutique in Harlem called Bombshell Beauty Lab. We open on Friday, and I'm just being a mom, working, hanging out.
And involved in one of the biggest investigations in American history.
I know. How do I manage that?
Kristin Davis, thank you for your candor and coming on to talk to us.
Thank you, Chris.
Appreciate it. Be well.
We begin with Trace Gallagher giving us the backstory on all of this tonight. Hi, Trace.
Hi, Martha. When news broke that 41-year-old Kristin Davis was being questioned in the special counsel probe, it immediately became ample grist for the media mill. But the nexus between the former madam and Mr. Mueller is its own fascinating tale that dates back some 10 years. After spending a half-decade running a high-end prostitution ring with 10,000 clients that Kristin Davis says included one-time New York Governor Eliot Spitzer, Davis pleaded guilty to one count of prostitution and was sent to Rikers Prison. After her release in 2008, Kristin Davis went on a New York radio show and met a political advisor named Roger Stone, who encouraged her to run for New York governor on a libertarian platform of legalizing prostitution, marijuana, and gay marriage. Davis lost the governor's race, but she maintained her friendship with Roger Stone. In fact, he is now godfather to her young son, and the three actually live platonically in the same New York apartment. Stone lives upstairs, Davis and her son downstairs. But experts say Special Counsel Mueller is likely much more interested in Davis's working relationship with Roger Stone, specifically her role, if any, during the 2016 campaign. Kristin Davis says she did not work with Roger Stone in the run-up to the presidential election. And during an interview with our Fox affiliate, WNYW, Davis says during her questioning by the special counsel team, she felt bullied. Watch.
We were saying how intimidating it must have been. Was it?
Completely. I mean, you're sitting in a room, there's no defense attorney, which is how the grand jury goes, with a prosecutor who clearly has a rapport with these jurors and answering leading questions. It was
That must have concerned you, bothered you a little?
It bothered me. I left there feeling very sick to my stomach.
Roger Stone has also commented saying Kristin Davis has, quote, no knowledge of Russian collusion, WikiLeaks collaboration, or any other illegal activity on my part. And we should note that Kristin Davis is one of about a half dozen of Roger Stone's associates to be contacted by Mueller's office. Martha.
Trace, thank you. Here now an exclusive interview. Former Manhattan Madam Kristin Davis, owner of Bombshell Beauty Lab, which is your newest endeavor. Good to have you here, Kristin. So basically, they're casting a very wide net around Roger Stone, and they are trying to find out if you knew anything about perhaps his relationship with Guccifer, his discussions with Julian Assange, the potential to leak emails through WikiLeaks. Is any of that anything that you were familiar with?
I mean, I have no knowledge of Russian collusion, of any wrongdoing in the 26 campaign. I didn't even work for Roger Stone at that time. He has been one of my best friends for many years. Also, him and his wife are godparents to my 2-year-old. But in terms of Russian collusion, I don't even believe that happened.
But you live in the same building, as we just heard. So,
right.
And
we have a duplex,
you see each
2
other,
floors.
and you're friends, and socially, I would imagine.
That's
so did he
correct.
ever discuss with you anything along the lines of, well, you know, there's some pretty hot emails that are about to drop. Julian Assange gave me a heads up, and something along those lines, anything along those lines ever?
I mean, what he did discuss was that he did not have any direct communications with Julian Assange. Julian Assange went on CNN in July of 2016, said the goods were coming. I think that it's been pretty public knowledge that Randy Credico was the intermediary between the two of them. So that's the story that he has repeated from 2016 on to now to me as a personal friend. So I believe that that is actually the truth.
So when you were in the grand jury and they were questioning you, what was their attitude about their case?
I mean, I think they're legitimately investigating whether collusion happened. Yeah. But their attitude is that, I mean, they're prosecutors in a room with a grand jury that they have a relationship with. They've been there for months. They seem to be on joking and fun sort of camaraderie in there, which is concerning. But there's nobody there to present another set of facts, and that also is concerning to me.
So what kind of questions did they ask you? Did they ask you anything that you thought was strange?
I think they just asked the same things that the news media has been asking. What about this Podesta tweet? And what about, you know, some of the things that have been made public? Because it certainly tends to foretell of some ominous event coming. But I think all of those things are also public information if you do your research.
Right. So that refers to a tweet that Roger Stone sent out shortly before the election saying that it'll soon be Podesta, meaning John Podesta, the campaign manager for Hillary Clinton. It'll soon be his time in the barrel. Right.
Which is often
So why did he say
misconstrued.
that?
It
What did
said
you know?
the Podestas. And it always gets changed by the media, but it was the Podestas. And he was referring to Uranium One. It was not referring to this colossal event that happened. I think the difference is that people want to portray Roger as a win-at-all-costs dirty trickster, but the actuality of that is he's not going to go commit a crime defrauding the entire country of their democracy to win an election.
So you're saying that he was referring to Uranium One, that case
That's
was going to be
correct.
back in the mix, and he not in any way was referring. Well, doesn't it seem a little ironic that the emails that came out were all John Podesta?
Well, I mean,
Or many of them were?
Coincidence. I don't think that he actually had any firsthand knowledge about the content. I think that, you know, Julian Assange went on CNN and said there's something coming out, and so the world was waiting. So you could, you know, make a reasonable assumption with a set of facts of what that would be.
Kristin Davis, thank you very much. Good to have you here today. Thanks for coming in.
The sitting president's longest-serving advisor is on trial for several felonies for allegations relating to how the president was elected. This is the legal finale that began with that dramatic 2018 arrest when Trump advisor Roger Stone became the last known Trump associate ever arrested in the Mueller probe. This now includes, this case, a former Mueller prosecutor pushing evidence this week, arguing President Trump basically misled Bob Mueller, a potential crime. Obviously, this would normally be the top story in the nation, everything I just listed off, but these are not normal times. And thus, only now do we turn, in this broadcast, to the trial of Roger Stone. It started with a bang, allegations that Roger Stone talked to Donald Trump twice during the campaign, which is contrary to Trump's testimony to Mueller. And it continued today with prosecutors laying out evidence and texts designed to show that Stone tampered with a witness. The texts ranged from potential jokes to potential threats to references to the press and even the beat. And the man Stone claimed as his back channel to WikiLeaks at one point, Randy Credico, took the stand, testifying under oath that he was not the back channel to WikiLeaks. If any of that sounds familiar, it may be because Credico made that claim right here on the beat. one of several interviews we have done with Mueller witnesses. And we've heard from both potential back channels to WikiLeaks at this point, both Credico and Jerome Corsi. We've heard from other Mueller witnesses like Michael Caputo and Steve Bannon and Carter Page, Sam Nunberg. We hear from these individuals as fact witnesses. Mueller wanted to speak with them for what they saw, what they experienced, what they knew, and so do we. Which brings us to our exclusive guest tonight, making her first ever appearance on The Beat, Mueller witness Kristin Davis, a longtime associate and friend of Roger Stone, and remains in touch with him during this trial. In her Mueller testimony, she identified Stone's WikiLeaks intermediary as Randy Credico, and she is here for an exclusive interview, her first since the start of this trial. Thank you for coming on The Beat.
Thanks for the opportunity to be here.
I appreciate it. What do you see as important with your friend and ally, Roger Stone, a couple days into this, as the government makes the case that he lied to Congress, that he tampered with a witness, that he basically did a lot of lying about access to WikiLeaks in order to protect Donald Trump?
I think there's a lot of things to be concerned about. From the start of the investigation, which was led by Hillary Clinton's personal attorney, Roger wrote a book, The Clintons' War on Women. They've been at a political warfare for many years, so I think that was unfair, and she's probably not capable of conducting an investigation fairly. Secondarily, the judge has denied his line of defense of being able to argue that there was no corrupt intent for the obstruction of justice charge. I think it's important to note that the Mueller report itself identified 3 tenets of an obstruction of justice charge, the third being corrupt intent. And Roger was investigated and arrested by the Mueller team. And he's not being held to the same standards as identified by them. I think it's also important to note that he was asked 600 times about WikiLeaks, Assange, and after 600 times, I think, 5 times of error is a fairly reasonable percentage.
Your argument being you don't think he was maliciously intending to commit the crime and that the errors that he may have made weren't deliberate. And I understand that as a defense, so we want to hear your side. The contacts with Mr. Credico, which are admittedly baroque and involve pets, I want to put up on the screen because some of these were read in trial today. Stone saying in these texts, quote, "Stonewall it, plead the fifth, do the Godfather dodge, prepare to die," and then that he would, quote, "take that dog away from Mr. Credico." Do you believe that it is fair that the prosecutors are introducing those texts as evidence that Roger Stone wanted to intimidate Mr. Credico or harm him or his pet?
I don't believe that Roger Stone was trying to intimidate him. I think you're only seeing one side of those texts. The two of them have had a horribly abusive frenemy relationship for a couple of decades. Have
you been a personal witness to that?
I've been a personal witness. In 2010 at my gubernatorial campaign event, Randy Credico started heckling me and they got into a fist fight. I've taken phone calls from Randy high at 3 o'clock in the morning, screaming at me about Roger Stone. He's going to testify against him in some unknown investigation. I think at this point, from what we've seen from Randy Credico today, it's pretty evident that he just pulled a very serious dirty trick on Roger Stone. He admitted on the stand that he accepted a message to pass along to Assange. So the whole time he's pretending to be a back channel and playing Roger and embellishing his role with Assange.
Let's dig into that. This is a very important point. It relates to the charges against Stone and also the public understanding of whether or not, as the Mueller team investigated, there really was some sort of nefarious plot to get inside intel from WikiLeaks. Mr. Credico spoke about that, you say, today in trial. We also asked him about that here because, as you know, one of the mistakes that Roger appears to have made was to publicly brag that he had a WikiLeaks back channel. He brought some of that on himself. This was what Randy told us about that when we pressed. Take a look. Do you ever carry messages from Julian Assange about what he might plan to do or the nature of his work to other people anywhere else in the world?
No, absolutely not. I totally deny. Was I the back channel? No, I was not the back channel.
he says he was not the back channel. Your defense on behalf of Roger Stone is that Randy Credico tricked Roger Stone?
Well, first off, my defense is I heard Randy Credico admit to it in my own apartment.
What did he say?
In 2017, he told myself and a film producer named David Lugo that he was the back channel. So, I mean, by his own accord, he was in a time where it wasn't as heated as an environment. He was taking credit for it.
Do you have any records of that?
I mean, David Lugo's gone on the record. He's a potential witness in the case.
So you both attest to that, which again goes to whether, beyond a shadow of a doubt, reasonable doubt, whether Mr. Stone is going to face this jury or go to jail potentially. You're saying that at one point they agreed on this story, and that story itself wasn't true because he wasn't really a back channel to WikiLeaks.
Well, I don't know that they agreed to the story because I think Roger really thought he was talking to maybe, or at least trying to, contact him. Then nothing ever came from that. But I think that Randy was embellishing his relationship with Assange. Also evident in this fake picture, this real picture outside of the Ecuadorian embassy. So you just did that and sent that to Stone to further this story that he's keeping? I mean, why would Roger have thought that was a serious picture?
Do you think that some of this trial relates to people bluffing and aggrandizing themselves into a story, and now the story has turned dark?
I think, you know, in Roger's defense, I think that you have to understand that he's a showman. He's an illusionist, and sometimes when you buy a ticket for the show, you don't necessarily think that the illusionist sawed a woman in half. You are happy with the show and the performance. And in the beginning, he said he had spoken to Assange, and then he quickly realized that that was an embellishment, and he needed to correct it.
So let me press you on that as the final point.
Changed.
You're saying something that we've reported here, which is you have to look at the entire context of Roger Stone's career as a dirty trickster to try to understand where he fits into all of this. But don't you think that he still had a legal obligation to end the show when he was speaking to the authorities in Congress, to not obstruct?
He did. He went there voluntarily. He wasn't subpoenaed. I think his state of mind was to clear his name. And I don't think, you know, if you've been tricked into saying that's correct or no after 600 questions, I don't think that's fair.
Understood. I really appreciate you making the time for us and appearing here on The Beat as part of this week of the trial. And as I would wish everyone, I wish all of you the best.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kristin Davis. Hey, I'm Ari Melber from MSNBC. You can see more of our videos right here, or better yet, subscribe to our YouTube channel below. You could have been anywhere in the world, but you're here with us, and we appreciate that.
The ex-Manhattan Madam, Kristin Davis. Kristin, thank you very much for being here.
Thanks for having me.
I'm curious. I mean, people in New York know Roger Stone. People across the country know Roger Stone from his association with Donald Trump and what they've seen in the past couple years with his media appearances. You know him very personally. The person you're seeing on television, this defiant person who doesn't seem at all worried about the consequences of his actions and what he could be facing, is that the same person he is in private?
No, not obviously. His showman in front of the press, and he has a point that he's innocent and he's going to fight the charges. But who he is in his personal life is very different. He's a family man. He's a very good and kind friend. He's an animal rights activist. Like, he's a very good person.
Is he scared about potential jail time?
Well, I mean, if the FBI came to your house with 29 people and guns, it's very intimidating. I personally went through that in my own arrest. It was very scary. So I think that there's some huge element of concern, but he's been under arrest, under investigation for 2 years. So I think he's prepared for this.
If Robert Mueller, and there is a question whether Robert Mueller would even want him as a cooperating witness, but if he did, what do you think the chances are that Roger Stone would be willing to cooperate?
I mean, he said very publicly he's not going to bear false witness against the president, so he's not going to make anything up, which I think he's a rarity because I believe that he believes that other people have lied against the president, being Cohen and also Jerome Corsi and Randy Credico. Both of these people are person one and person two lying against Roger Stone. So there's a whole lot of misinformation out there and lack of truth.
The FBI also raided not just his home down in Florida, but an apartment in Harlem. They thought you were there, right?
Right. I shared a duplex with Roger for the last couple of years. I since have moved a couple of weeks ago. There's nothing there.
What do you think they were looking for?
according to the search warrant, information regarding WikiLeaks, Guccifer, any collusion, that sort of thing.
Did Roger Stone ever talk to you about his communications with Guccifer?
To my knowledge, no. I mean, he didn't have anything other than what he's disclosed, which is a tweet conversation. From what I've been told for years now, Randy Credico is the intermediary, and I testified as such into the special counsel in August. And then 2 weeks later, Credico was subpoenaed. So I think there's a number of us, David Lugo, who was at my apartment, who's a filmmaker, who Randy Credico had filmed Roger for a documentary. He told the story in public, in front of numerous people at my apartment.
Did Roger Stone have conversations with you in 2016 about WikiLeaks and about the information that was being released and whether or how it could help Donald Trump?
In 2016, he had a conversation with me, which I also testified in front of the special counsel, that Randy Credico was his intermediary and he did not know the content of the emails, when it was coming, just that Randy Credico kept telling him something is coming.
Why was he trying to get more information?
Well, I mean, he's trying to find out what it is. I don't believe that he was ever successful.
You don't think he was ever successful?
No.
So why was he tweeting about John Podesta's time in the barrel?
Well, having been around during that time, he had Jerome Corsi doing some opposition research. I know Jerome Corsi has said something else, but I challenged Jerome Corsi to present the proof. He's released all of his other court documents. He's released his plea deal to the media. So where's the proof that Roger Stone has you covering for him? At 2016, at that time, there was no pressure on Roger for his tweet. It was a non-issue. 6 weeks later, it's an issue. So,
well, because 6 weeks later, suddenly John Podesta's emails were coming out on a daily basis.
Right, but Jerome Corsi's story is that he's covering for Roger in early August. It wasn't an issue then. He didn't need any cover then. It wasn't an issue until much later.
If you didn't know Roger Stone well, would you look at this and say to yourself, gosh, it just looks pretty coincidental, too coincidental to make sense?
I mean, I understand why people have questions. And, coincidence is sometimes just coincidence, and that's all there is. I mean, I was around during that time, and his story has not changed for years to people close to him, to myself.
But his story changed in front of Congress, and he did lie to Congress, according to the special counsel. And they have transcripts where he said one thing, and then they have emails and text messages that contradict what he claimed. He said he didn't have any memory of having any of these discussions in documentation. And there's a ton of messages that have that. Why was he lying?
Right. Well, good example. I testified for the special counsel. I don't remember 50% of what they asked me. You're under a lot of pressure. Your adrenaline's flowing. You don't have an attorney present. It's very intimidating. I'm quite sure. And we also don't have the context in which that conversation, that testimony, we've only seen like 3 or 4 lines where he said no. How many times did you ask him? What hour was this into his testimony, and in what context? We can look at what the charge against Randy Credico, witness tampering. I personally He
told Credico to pull a character from The Godfather, go in front of Congress and say you don't know anything.
Which was clearly in jest.
But he also told him, you got to get your story lined up with mine.
Well, Roger kept saying that Randy Credico is the intermediary, and Randy has publicly denied that when a number of us were present.
He did also say, get your story lined up with mine, and Credico kept saying to him, Roger, just tell the truth.
No, Roger was the one saying, tell the truth. We're only seeing snippets of that conversation. Credico has been threatening Roger Stone for many, many years, using Ari Melber as a platform, which he's come on that show numerous times. And we're only seeing Roger's response, but I have personally read the emails. I've seen Randy Credico get into a fistfight with Stone after heckling me at my own campaign events. He's an awful human being.
Let me ask you this. You know this orbit better than most people do. You know Donald Trump's orbit in some ways better than most people do. I know you don't know everybody that's been involved in this, but the special counsel or the SDNY have come up with person after person who have lied about Russia. In one way or another, they've lied about Russia. Why is everybody lying about the same subject?
I don't believe the collusion happened. If it did, it didn't happen from Team Stone. So to the extent that people don't remember, I don't remember what I did a year ago. So you're asking somebody who's in the middle of a campaign who talks to hundreds of people a day
You don't say that
to
doesn't
remember.
exist. I never did that.
Well, I mean, I think everybody at that time, every political journalist out there was trying to find out what WikiLeaks had. So if you're asking 10 million different people what it is and people are talking about it, you can't remember every single person you spoke with.
Do you think it's just a bunch of people who suddenly had a lapse of memory when it came to one specific subject?
I don't know. I mean, I don't know the other people's intent. I only know Roger, because I've been friends with him and worked with him off and on for years. So I only know that his intent from the beginning was not to lie. He, on his own accord, testified to clear his name. So, I mean, he's not a stupid man. So obviously he's not going to go on there with the intent to lie because he wasn't even subpoenaed. He did that willingly. He was getting berated in public, in the media, destroying his political consulting business.
Does he have any regrets about 2016, the way he behaved?
I can't answer that. I believe that all he wants to do is clear his name.
Kristin Davis, thanks so much for coming in. We appreciate your time.
Thank you.
And